Hello, all, and welcome to another session of Pragati Vichar Literature Festival's Juniors Authors Marathon. In this session, the title is Stories That Spark Dreams, and the theme is Imagination, Adventure, and Dreaming Big. The wonderful set of panelists we are having first Verushka Patel, who's a young storyteller who loves writing realistic fiction where her creativity meets the world around her. An avid reader and writer, she also plays the piano and sings in her school band. Curious and driven, Verushka explores subjects like finance and economics, expressing her ideas through research and creative projects. Thank you so much, Verushka, for joining us. Then, next on the panel, we are having Abhiram Chaturvedi, who is an enthusiastic young writer who loves crafting stories filled with adventure and curiosity. He enjoys observing the world around him and turning everyday experiences into engaging narratives. When not writing, he loves solving puzzles and exploring science related hobbies. Thank you so much, Abhiram, for joining us. Last on the panel, we are having Dishita Khera, who is the winner of Once Upon in Our Mind Season 2, an international story writing competition organized by Reds World Publishing. She is a budding author known for her expressive language and thoughtful storytelling. She enjoys writing about friendship, nature, and the little moments that shape our lives. Her creativity shines through both her stories and her interest in art and music. So, with that, let's move to the question answer round. First question for the day would be: what inspired you to write your story, and when did you first feel like, yes, I want to be an author? Let's start with Aviram first.
Sure. So for me, this all started when I was 9 years old, and I distinctly remember that for my birthday, I got the Percy Jackson series as a gift. And it was the first exposure of me to the fantasy genre, the high fantasy genre. And I remember being blown away by the intensity and scale of the story. After that, there was no stopping because my mind was obviously in wonder, it was in awe, and I decided to write my own book soon after. It wasn't a huge book, it wasn't a huge story, nor did it have multifaceted characters or anything that usually big novels have, but it was a start. And I remember the excitement I felt back then, and that excitement carried me forward to write another one, and brought me where I am today. When you ask where exactly was the point where I wanted to be an author, I think it came when I was writing my third book. Because at that point, uh, I had basically made my storylines complex enough. I had developed my characters enough. I had mastered the craft to some level, not too much, but to some level that I could feel the excitement and I could feel the emotions running through my eyes as I wrote the story. And it was that feeling that I always remember, even now when I write. And it is that feeling that inspires me to continue writing.
Perfect. Guys, just perfect. So, Verishka, your inputs into this.
Okay, so I wrote this book because I've always felt that ambition doesn't have an age. I wanted to turn my experiences, my dreams, and the questions I ask about the future into something that could maybe inspire someone else someday. So this book turned into one long, imperfect symphony, combining all the things I love, like finance, poetry, and music. Also, this book started with just one vague idea 1.5 years ago, but it continued to unfold as the chapters progressed.
Hmm, perfect. Dishita, your inputs.
Okay, so actually, I did not have any such inspiration. I had participated in Once Upon in Our Mind season 1, but I couldn't make it to the winners list. So, when we got the news about Once Upon in Our Mind season 2, so my parents encouraged me to write a story. They said that you cannot just stop trying, be afraid of the failure. So, I tried once again. I have never thought while writing the story that one day I would be recognized as an author or my story would be published in a book. When the first moment I felt that I actually want to become an author was when I saw my story published in a book. The sense of pride and recognition that comes on seeing your name on the back of a book and your story written by you published in a book is the thing that inspires you to work forward And that was the moment when I felt that this is my passion and this is what I want to do in life.
Perfect. So with that, what is the most fun or exciting moment in your book that you loved creating? Let's start with Verushka first.
Okay, so the most thrilling moment in my book isn't just a certain scene, it's the becoming. It's the journey, and it's about how every single chapter finally started falling into place and created this tapestry of how the protagonist, Verena, transitioned from early beginnings into adulthood and into independence. It's about a certain girl who scribbled her dreams into the margins of her textbooks in ninth grade, finally made it to Harvard, and ended up solving a financial crisis, which was the greatest New York City had ever seen.
Hmm. Perfect. Abhiram, what about you?
For me, one of the most exciting moments was building scenes where the world truly opens up for the reader. I've always enjoyed creating settings that feel lived in and creating worlds that feel unique. They feel distinct. They feel like they have their own rules, their own politics, their own culture. I love creating these kind of detailed environments. So any scene that basically puts the reader into this new world, that takes this opportunity to let the world building shine and shapes the physical landscape, the history, the small details that hint at the characters, how they relate to the environment, how their backstories are. These small scenes that don't seem to have any impact on the book are actually one of the most enjoyable scenes to write, and they also shape the book in ways that the reader can't see while reading.
Hmm. Interesting. Dishita, what's your point of view in this?
Okay, so the most favorite part of my story is writing adventure parts. So I have written one story that has got published in a book. So in that, my favorite part was when Lily and Little Mermaid, the main characters of my story, went alone on an adventure to save a helpless girl. So that was my favorite part. When I got this idea, I just imagined it and I told it to my parents. And both me and my parents just loved the idea. When I was writing this part, I was feeling as if I am at their place and I am doing the adventure, swimming around and helping someone.
Perfect. So, if your main character suddenly came to life, what would you want to talk to them about? Dishita, let's start with you.
Okay, so if the main character of my story, Lily Mermaid, would come to life, I would first talk to them how they tackle difficult situations during their adventures, what all they saw in Australia on their trip, what all they study at school, what all games they like to play, and what's their hobbies and passion. And as imagination has no boundaries, so if they really came to life, I would like to learn something from them that they are expert at. Maybe I would like to learn swimming from them.
Nice. Vishka, you?
So if the protagonist Verena came to life, I think one thing I would ask her for is definitely some advice. I would ask her that even if she didn't know where she was going, how did she how did she know she couldn't stay where she was? How did she make it to the stars, and how did she solve a financial crisis before the entirety of New York could even see it? And I would ask her how I could become like her one day.
Hmm. Very inspiring. Abhiram, let's start with you.
Okay, if my main character Liam suddenly came to life, the first thing I would want to talk to him about was what was happening internally during his most conflicted moments. In my book, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of tragedy, and there is a lot going in the characters' minds. As a writer, I can map out their choices and their emotions, but there is always a gap between what we create and what the character might actually feel if he was real. I would love to hear his own explanation for why he made certain decisions that he did in my book, especially the ones that look reckless or painful from the outside. Having that kind of perspective from Liam himself to me and understanding his mind's process and thought while he was in those specific moments would be extremely meaningful to me as a creator.
Hmm. Interesting. So, what messages or feeling do you want your readers, especially kids your age, to get from your books? Verushka?
I wrote this book for every girl who's ever been told she's too much, too ambitious, or too driven, and for every person who's ever looked up at the stars and wondered if they'd actually make it. Because I was also that girl, and I still am. I wrote this for every girl whose stories are still unfolding and whose futures are just too bright to be boxed in.
Very inspiring. Abhiram?
Okay, so the one message I would want my readers to take away from my book would be specifically about resilience. You know, my book has a lot of war in it, it has a lot of propaganda, it has a lot of conflict. And in these, the characters and their journeys have been very, very difficult. In this journey, the most specific value is resilience. If there's one thing my readers can also take away, it's resilience. The characters start away almost from nothing and they face impossible choices. They face dilemmas, they face more and more conflicts their way, they face problems, they face everything that they can. But even still, they power through and they somehow make their way through history. And I think that is extremely valuable because even though obviously the scenarios wouldn't apply to the reader, the values that the characters have shown will definitely do.
Hmm. And Dishita, what about you?
So I wrote the story for the children of my age, and I chose mermaids because children of my age, especially girls, like the mermaids very much. So one thing, that message I want my readers to get from the story is the values that my main characters Lily show. I want them to learn kindness and how kindness can take them in such a long journey. I also want the leader to feel and relive every moment and emotion of the story. I want the reader to feel happy whenever the characters are happy, to be sad whenever the characters are sad, and to jump around the place while reading the book whenever the character is excited.
Hmm. Interesting to be able to feel emotions, right? So, with that, let's dive into the individual questions that I have for all of you. So, my first question is for Verushka. Your book talks about dreaming big. What is one dream of yours that helped you write this story?
So, for writing the story, I had one dream that really shaped this book. It's my dream of building a life that's bigger than the limits people place on girls my age. I've always wanted to prove to myself first, and then to everyone else, that ambition has no ceiling. The dream of doing something extraordinary in the future, of creating impact early, is what pushed me to write this story. And also, it's like a letter to myself in the future, hoping I become just like Verena someday.
Hmm. Interesting. Dishita, your story has magic, friendship, and adventure. Which character is most like you and why? So basically, the characters, what do you draw from yourself and then?
So, in a story you have wrote on your own, it's very difficult to find a particular favorite character. But if you ask me, all characters are my favorite. But in particular, I can say that Lily Mermaid. Lily Mermaid is my favorite because of her qualities she shows. Learning from everyone, listening to her teachers, parents, helping out everyone, helping her friends. All these qualities that I have wrote about Lily Mermaid are actually what I am. So when I see Lily Mermaid and when I read my story, I can relate myself and my life to Lily Mermaids. So that's why I can feel the movement and the adventures she has, that I am doing that adventures.
Hmm. Nice. So my last question would be for Abhiram. So your story involves creating creativity and imagination. What was the most challenging scene for you to write, and how did you overcome it?
I think definitely the most challenging scene for me to write was the climax, where several threads, emotional, thematic, and plot driven, collided at the same time. It was the moment where the two main characters, Vosuba and Pulax's character arcs, reached their turning point at the same time, and that alone made it extremely demanding. But after that, there was also the biggest external conflict in the story. So I had to balance the raw physical stakes with the quieter and more complex emotional ones. Too much focus on the action and the character would be drowned out, and too much focus on the emotions and the tension would lose away. What helped me overcome it was stepping back and asking what each character absolutely needed to confront in that moment, not just externally but also internally. Once I understood what climax truly meant to them on a personal level, the dialogue and the decisions could feel a bit more honest. And instead of trying to force a perfectly choreographed scene, I let the emotions take way. I let the chaos basically unfold, and I think it turned it into a more or less beautiful scene.
So with that, we are at the end of the session. Thank you so much, Abhiram, Verushka, and Dishita for joining us and sharing your valuable, insights with us. And I do hope people your age turn up with more stories, more authorship, and more penmanship. Thank you so much.